Here we are with a Word with the Herd. We're starting out with Coach Kevin O'Brien. He's taking us on a walking tour back into the building, I hope. Or we may have to edit this out. But what are we looking at?
The question is, guys, is I don't have my keys to the building. I wasn't planning on going inside. So unless this door's open,
this is the way
I might have to find another. Where's the best place on campus for what?
This is making for fascinating YouTube and Spotify right now.
I'm in the building. I'm in the building. Hopefully,
while you're walking, we're going to let people watch, and I'm going to say good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are right now. Philip Hutcheson, Word with the Herd. Glad to have you here. I'm the athletic director at Lipscomb University, and Coach Kevin O'Brien is trying to make it to better Wi-Fi than he has right now. So I'm just going to keep on talking until we get him back with us. But glad to have everybody here. If you found us, it's because you're on YouTube or Spotify. The best way to follow Lipscomb Athletics is at Lipscomb Bisons, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Any of those will help you get there. If you want to follow Lipscomb Women's Soccer, and that's who we have today, is the head coach of the Lipscomb Women's Soccer team, Kevin O'Brien. If you want to follow them, it's at Lipscomb WSOC. For women's soccer, and you can follow them on all the social media channels, although I don't think OB has anything to do with it. Usually it's his wife, Shannon, that is helping us, or it could be Leah or Nate or one of the assistants, I don't know. But OB, I have a feeling this is great. I mean, people are getting to see the entire campus as you walk down there if they're watching this right now. So we're a couple minutes into it, but you kind of helped me pass the time as I went through our intro here. So you're kind of cutting out, so we're going to do a little, here's what we're going to do. We're going to through the magic of technology, we're going to let Tanner Hibbs cut us off, and we're going to cut right back in, and it's going to seem like no time ever passed. We're going to talk with Coach Kevin O'Brien. Well, and through the magic of technology, we're back, and Coach Kevin O'Brien has magically changed locations here. Outside was very nice today, OB, and, I was driving past the soccer field this morning, and I was thinking, man, I cannot wait to get back on the pitch. I imagine you feel the same.
Oh, every day I drive by it or run by it or bike by it and feel the same exact way. So looking forward to when that day finally happens.
So we've got Allen Arena in behind us, which is also a very nice place. I was hoping with those banners, it's hard to see, but there's several women's soccer banners that are hanging up there among those banners, and a lot of good stuff on them. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about those more in a minute. So for people who have joined us before, you know that this has been our way during the COVID time to try to get to know our coaches a little bit better, get to know about our programs a little bit more. Hopefully you find out some things you didn't know, get you excited about next year, that kind of thing. And so this is actually the last, OB, the last coach. We saved, I don't know if we saved the best for last, but certainly you're here and not that far away from soccer season. I mean, are you feeling the grip a little bit, especially with the uncertainty of the season right now? Here it is. We're recording this, by the way, on July 14th. I don't know when people are listening, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. So, we're day by day waiting to hear what the season's going to look like for not only our conference, but the, NCAA at large. A lot of different people are doing different things, and some have already canceled their falls. And, so I think at this point in time, just getting some clarity on, hey, this is what it's going to look like. This is, how it's going to play out. I think that'll be great for not only the coaching staff, but the players who are kind of, on pins and needles trying to figure out, okay, it's already been a unique summer compared to anything they've experienced in the past. How unique is the season going to be for them? That's kind of the question that's on everybody's mind.
How much have the players been able to train, or, if 10 is things are exactly the same as always and 0 is nothing is the same in terms of summer, how much has this summer been alike or different from previous summers for the players, do you think?
Yeah, pretty substantial. I would say it's a 3 out of 10 because most of them are playing all summer long. There's the WPSL, which is a league primarily composed of college players, and our kids will go back to their home states and home cities and represent those teams and train 3-4 times a week. And so when they show up in preseason, they're ready to go. Those seasons were canceled. Therefore, it has been a summer unlike any before. Really, really different. I think hoping the players have been intrinsically motivated, doing the work on their own, but only time will tell. And I know some of them didn't even have the resources to do it at the capacity that they would have liked to.
So you're a former soccer player. As a collegiate soccer player, and really beyond that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just maybe one more thought on this, and then we'll go back to your story a little bit, and then maybe we'll circle back to this again. But just while we're on the topic, I'm curious. Again, same question on the fitness side. I know for some sports and some athletes, you can kind of cross train or figure out ways to stay fit and that sort of thing. But for some sports, it's just harder to kind of have the kind of fitness you need for that particular activity. As far as soccer goes, in your opinion, is that something that you can kind of cross train and kind of keep pretty fit, or is it like not so specific you really need to be doing more playing to kind of get in the shape you need to be in?
Yeah, and I would say the second, the latter for sure. The playing kind of prepares you for playing, and I think people will say they're not game fit yet. They've been doing running. They've been, whether it was on the treadmill or roads or trails, they've been doing that kind of fitness. But it's, burst of 10, 15, 20-yard sprints time and time again is what our game requires. So they will certainly not be ready for that. Furthermore, kind of, I think the piece that will be missing the most is that technical ability to manipulate the ball, to get it to do what you want it to do, having a clean first touch, accurate passes, all those little details, which are really, really important, are going to be pretty substantially off. For instance, the EPL has started back up, best players in the entire world, and I was scratching my head at how poor the games were the first couple weekends of games, and the lack of quality and technical ability of the best. So I can only imagine that our players are going to be, a little bit off the pace, but that's okay. We've got an awesome group, and there's so much more than just soccer players here, and just excited to get back together. I think that's what we all want.
Yeah, for sure. So for people who aren't as familiar with you, a lot of people tune into this just to get to know the person a little bit more. So you obviously, well, not obviously, you played college soccer, played at the College of Charleston, but was soccer always your first love, or did you play other sports? How did you fall into soccer being your thing?
Yeah, when I was young, I was multi-sport. I did tennis. I actually raced bicycles, believe it or not. And then soccer were kind of the three that I would probably invested most of my time in. And then at 14 was kind of that time where my folks said, okay, you've got opportunities in soccer. Do you want to invest fully in that sport? And that's when I did. And, it paid dividends. I've been passionate about it my whole life. And for whatever crazy reason, it just continues to grow, that passion and love for the game. And now being a teacher of it versus a player myself, it's just a different kind of passion, which is, it's still great.
Take people a little bit through your coaching career. You had several stops on the way to Lipscomb. One of the things that's interesting part of your story is you coached Lipscomb women's soccer team and have been very successful doing it, but you didn't coach women before you came to Lipscomb. So talk a little bit about your journey from player to coach, and then maybe if there's just one or two things along the way, like at each spot, like this is something you learned that's helped you be a better coach now, or something that happened that maybe wasn't so good, but it was kind of a negative turned into a positive for you now. Just kind of walk us through your journey there.
Yeah, so the journey post-college, I played for a while, and was able to marry. Back then, being a professional soccer player wasn't a 12-month commitment. You'd play for about a 5-6 month season, and then you'd have a really long off season. Well, I got involved in coaching. First job I took was at a place called Creighton University. A guy named Brett Simon was the head coach. He had recruited me. I wasn't about to go into the cold climates of Omaha, Nebraska, being that I grew up in Atlanta. But
Right.
we had a wonderful relationship, even through the recruiting process, to where when I was done with my career, Creighton was actually at South Carolina playing a spring game. I drove up and I just said, "Hey, Brett, I'm not sure if you remember me." And he said, "Of course I do." And I said, I feel like coaching's the path I want to follow. And he said, "Well, I've got a volunteer spot out on my staff if you want to come on out." And I'm like, done deal. They had gone to, the NCAA championship a couple years in a row. The 2 years that I was there, the program went to the Elite Eight both years.
Wow.
Just learned an incredible amount from a fantastic soccer coach. And then that kind of springboarded the way coaching works. If some of you out there don't know, is the top assistant at Creighton got the head coaching job at Oregon State. So here I was, a relatively young guy that was then offered two paid coaching positions, one at Oregon State and one at Creighton. And again, I already shared that I don't love cold weather. So I was off to Oregon to go out to Oregon State and try to rebuild a program that was struggling out there in the Pac-12, and loved that experience. Did that for 2 years and had, fantastic, time learning under a guy named Dana Taylor. And I still had the itch to play. So I was still relatively young at that point in time, and got a call from a team back in Charlotte that I'd been a part of. And that's more than just a soccer team. It's actually, it was a professional soccer team and a sports ministry at the same time. And just felt like the Lord was calling me back. So I left. I'd set myself up pretty well. And none of my colleagues were like, what are you thinking? Why would you get out of coach? And you've gone from a great program to another really strong program. You've set yourself up to get a good job at a young age. And I just really felt like the Lord was calling me back to Charlotte. So I went back and, hopped on the team, and then was able to finagle my way on staff at UNC Charlotte, another really good soccer program. And had 1 year with a guy named John Tart, and then 3 years with a guy named Jeremy Gunn. And Jeremy was one of the best soccer coaches in the country. He's won 3 national championships at Stanford in the last 5 years. So I learned under another guy who was just brilliant in the game, and loved my time in Charlotte. So then I was playing and coaching, and it was one of these situations where I had the opportunity then to go to Davidson as an associate head coach. So if there was ever a coach that worked his way from the very bottom rung to every position, from volunteer to restricted earnings to second assistant to first assistant, I was the guy. And I finally got a chance. I was the associate head coach at Davidson. We had 3 great seasons there, and that was kind of the moment in time. I remember it vividly. I love telling this story. I was recruiting.
Yeah.
I was recruiting in Dallas, Texas, with a buddy of mine, Kelly Finley, who's actually the men's head coach at Liberty University. And we had a friend named Carlos who had just won a national championship for UNC Chapel Hill in his first year of coaching there. And I just remember the Lord kind of put this burden on my heart to be doing more than just coaching the coach. And I said to Kelly, I'm like, Kelly, if we pulled 1,000 people or 10,000 people in the streets of Dallas today and asked them who Carlos Somoano was, how many do you think would know who he was? And he was the pinnacle, right? He just won a national championship in men's soccer. And, Kelly fired back pretty quickly, like, man, probably not very many. And I'm like, well, what are we chasing after? I felt like that was a really kind of pivotal time in my life to say, okay, where do I want the rest of my career to head? Do I want to keep chasing, the highest level soccer where the dividends really aren't that great? You might make a decent amount of money and you might win some stuff, but I felt like God was calling me to make a more profound impact in my coaching, to use some of the gifts and abilities that he'd given me in the game of soccer, which I was able to do when I lived in Charlotte and played with the Charlotte Eagles. And I learned so much about what sports ministry looked like and how to use a soccer ball for evangelism and all these great, great things, but I hadn't really put them into practice yet. And at that point in time, I told Kelly, I'm like, man, I don't know what it looks like, but I am going to coach at a Christian school. I don't care, Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA. That's where I feel like God's calling me. And that's what I started chasing after. And lo and behold, Lipscomb University, I'd never heard of, never been to. Opportunity presents itself, and it was too good of an opportunity to pass up, to marry my faith in soccer. And ultimately that was a leap of faith in and of itself, to step into coaching women, something that I hadn't done prior, apart from with ODP. And my wife Shannon was coaching at UNC Charlotte. And it was something that was new, but something that I felt pretty confident I'd be able to do, only because colleagues had said, yeah, you could make the switch. There's not a lot of men's coaches in terms of their temperament and kind of just their composition that could jump from men to women successfully. But I probably had 4 or 5 people tell me that, man, you certainly could if you ever wanted to. So I was happy to follow their advice.
What do you think it was about you or your temperament or your coaching style? Or, I mean, did they ever give you any more specific feedback than that they made them think that you could make that jump?
Well, I think kind of vulnerability, transparency, relationship side of things, which I think you need to do well to be successful in women's athletics, was kind of a strength of mine. And they thought that would translate well. I was never a big yeller, screamer. That was never kind of in my coaching, style to begin with. So I think being more of a teacher of the game, and being able to talk to players individually about tactics, and then as a group about tactics, and do it in a way that, can paint the picture and the light bulb goes off for the players, might have been the combination of those couple things that maybe they thought would be a good match.
Now, you mentioned a couple things in that story, and I appreciate you sharing that one story you did about being in Texas. I've heard you tell that before. I think that's always very telling and meaningful to me. You mentioned your wife Shannon in there. I didn't really. I guess I know you met through your time with the Charlotte Eagles, but I was trying to do the timeline there, I guess. So just kind of for the people who don't know, your wife Shannon, tell a little bit about her background, because she has a soccer background too.
Yeah, so we were both in Charlotte together. She had just finished playing her career at the University of Arizona. I had been out of college for
as a keeper,
as a goalkeeper. Yeah, and it was another really cool story, because back then at the Charlotte Eagles, we used to do discipleship training, and the guys and the girls would actually come together, and there'd be a presenter that would kind of go through whatever it might be, and we do worship together, and we do some things that again, kind of unique in the whole soccer environment to begin with, but now you've got a men's team and a women's team doing it alongside of one another. And there was just something about her countenance, her maturity, that really kind of was a spark in my eye, where I'm like, wow, this girl's really special. And, that summer we started to get to know each other and hanging out with each other, and the rest is history. We've had 17 amazing years ever since. And so thankful, because if I didn't make that decision to go back to Charlotte and I stayed in Oregon, then I'm not married to one of the greatest people around. So
and so in 2012, you made the jump over to Lipscomb then, and I think I've got the timeline right there. I was trying to remember, but 2012. So you're coming up into your 8th season, and when you first came to Lipscomb, the team had limited success at that time. And so kind of as you look back and assess that time, what were some of the keys for people who don't know? I mean, the team now has been to, how many straight finals, I guess, in the conference? Five straight finals. Has been to the NCAA tournament the past 2 years. 2 years ago, went and played Mississippi State in the first round at Mississippi State, beat them, went on to play Duke at Georgetown in the next round, and lost a tough match to a good team. This past year went to Louisville and played a good Louisville team well, and just were on the wrong end of that. But again, another appearance in the NCAA tournament. So really took a team that had limited success, and now is one of the, among the just a couple of the perennial powers in the conference, really. Do you have any sense or memory of what were some of the things early on you were trying to accomplish to kind of get to where you are now?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it was built around who we wanted to be as a program. I think you hear people talk about goal setting, and our goals weren't to be in a conference championship or to go to the NCAAs. It was who do we want to be as people, obviously first and foremost for the Lord, but then also as soccer players. Like, we want to be the hardest working team on the field. And there's a list that, we go through in preseason with our players every year. And it's like, hey, if we're these kind of players and these kind of coaches, then our likelihood of success increases. Because I tell everybody, we're not the most talented team probably in the conference or even in our area, but we have so much success because of the girls committing to these, hey, this is who we're going to be as a program. We're going to be unified. We're going to be together. We're going to be committed. All these things that I think make a great team. Our girls have said, hey, that's what we're wanting to sign up for. And that is what helped tip the scales in our direction, because early on, the players that I inherited, and even for the first couple of recruiting classes, it was hard for them necessarily to catch that vision that we could, through these specific things, have the success, because we weren't having it that time. And I think we all want success, immediately. And it doesn't work that way. It takes time and it takes effort and commitment. And, we had a few, I would say, catalyst special people that signed on and led the charge internally, players that caught the coach's vision, that could lead from inside the group. And, that was ultimately what was really pivotal for the program, having the success that we're having now.
So, again, as you said, kind of early on, limited success, trying to make the jump. And really, you always need a couple of players who are going to believe it before they see it. Some will say, I'll believe it when I see it. But, when you're in that point in a program, you need some who will believe it before they see it. And I guess it must have taken kind of between the assistants you had at the time and the team you had, it just kind of have this bubbling up effect eventually that it kind of comes to the top. Do you remember any particular players from early on? I guess it'd be dangerous. It'd be like choosing your favorite children or something. So you're not doing that. But I mean, let me ask it this way instead. What were you looking for early on for those catalyst type of players? What were the things that you said, man, if we could just get this, that would help elevate our program? And now it has.
Yeah, kids that are gonna put the program first. I think college athletics is very easy for the players to put themselves first and to do what they want to do. So it was saying, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice, obviously some social life decisions that go on. A lot of college and universities say, hey, we're gonna put the game and the team first and commit to those things. Really play, for me, I'm a blue collar guy. That's kind of my nature as a player. That's always been my nature as a coach. So players that never quit, they never give up, that are going to work every second that you ask them to work, that don't cut corners. They weren't the most special soccer players that you'd ever find. They were kids that had the most important thing to me, and that's huge hearts, and that really wanted to make a name for the program over themselves. It wasn't about them being all conference or anything. It was about the team taking this jump. Because I'll be honest, and I love this because I'm an underdog guy too, is some of these players, she wasn't recruited because she was a goalkeeper and she was short, right? And none of the big programs wanted a shorter goalkeeper. Well, boy, did they miss out on a great goalkeeper. Or, this forward, she's good, she can finish, she can head it, but she's not super fast. So we're not going to go with her. And boy, did they miss out getting a great goal scorer. So we were able to land players that maybe, to many other people, there were deficiencies in their games. But I'm like, no, they have the right stuff to take us to the next level. And we're all flawed, let's be honest. And it was just a beautiful thing to see how those players came together and were able to inspire their teammates and even the coaching staff. As they were excited, we were excited. As we were excited, they were excited. And optimism breeds optimism. And it was just a wonderful thing to be a part of, to see us go from 2 wins and one of the worst RPIs in the nation to 6, to then we've had double digits ever since. So it's been really, really cool.
Yeah. And it has been a really fun thing to watch with the team. And, it strikes me that, of course, you can't tell a whole lot when you're standing up at the top of the stadium just watching a practice from a distance. I mean, I'm not down there. Occasionally I'll come by just to watch what's going on and kind of just enjoy that. But it does seem like, the team works hard, but it seems like there's a kind of a joy, kind of a good spirit to it most of the time too. And I don't know if that's a function of the type of players you're recruiting, or it's something you're doing in the environment or whatever. But I say the same thing about a couple other teams too. I get to watch them practice and I'm like, yeah, they work hard, but they really do seem like they're enjoying themselves out there.
Yeah, I would say that's a pillar of our program. We want to have fun. We don't want it to feel like they're showing up for a job and that they've got to grind it out. It's like, no, let's really enjoy being with each other. enjoy the journey. Something you shared with our team a couple years ago that I think they really latched onto. It's like, hey, these 4 years are going to fly by, and you really want to enjoy being with each other and having the opportunity to play at the level that you're getting to play.
So you've been an assistant coach in several different places, and then you've had some good have some good ones right now, and have had some good ones already. A couple of them have gone on to other jobs. One of them, Kelsey Phoenix, has gone on to a head coaching job. Gabe Franco went on to a good job back at his alma mater as an assistant. You've got great assistants right now as well. Just as you kind of reflect on your time as an assistant and the ones that we have now, for people who are coaches that are listening to this or watching this, they're interested in these kind of questions. What do you makes a great assistant, do you think?
I think part of it comes down to building a staff that complements you as a coach. Like, I've got lots of weaknesses, so I hire coaches that are strong where I'm weak, and I might have strengths that are weaknesses to them. But then when you put us all together, overall, it's her strengths, his strengths, her strengths, and that's kind of how we make decisions, how we ultimately run the program, and we allow assistants to really thrive in the areas where God's gifted them. And that for me has been one of the most rewarding things, is to work with coaches that are so talented, but more importantly, they're just wonderful people. And then just giving them the reins and say, hey, Lord's gifted you in these areas. I'm not gifted in that area. Run with it. And they do. And I think the girls appreciate that it's not just one head coach running everything. It's a collaborative effort from start to finish, and just about everything we do. And that's been a big reason for the success that we've had, is just the great people we've surrounded ourselves with.
It's always struck me, even though the head coaches make the hires for the assistant coaches, I generally try to talk with the assistant coaches. Anytime we hire an assistant coach, I want to know them, because I want them to know, like, hey, every person's important in this staff. And I really think the secret sauce at Lipscomb is the people that we have. And so, you want to make sure that stays excellent, solid, consistent, whatever words you're trying to look for. But it really is important then to let them go off and do their thing, because as much as you'd like to have great relationships and influence and make a difference in the lives of the young people that you're coaching, it's a lot of times it could be the assistant who, for whatever reason, they may connect a little bit better with certain players, and that's really, maybe at the end of their time, it's going to be that relationship that made the biggest difference for them, maybe not even the head coach.
Without a doubt. And I would say Leah and Shannon and Kelsey in her time here, their impact in the character development of the women on our team, it's been monumental. Things that we really can't enter into in terms of relationships with our players, conversations about life and a lot of the stuff that's going on in the hearts of our players. Our assistant coaches can help carry some of that, help encourage them, help affirm them, and kind of lead them in good decisions to the best of their ability. And that's, again, part of, I think, what makes our program a little bit more special than a lot of those that we recruit against, is we say, hey, that relational depth between our female assistant coaches and our players, it's not found. The game, not only, I'll speak of all sports, it can be very transactional. You play for me, you do what I tell you to do, and that's kind of the relationship where that's not what we have here. And we want there to be a relational depth, not only within the players amongst themselves, but within the coaching staff, at the appropriate levels. But I think the women, our female staff, are just so good at diving deep and really challenging these girls to be the best that they can be for the Lord. And it's amazing.
All right, so we're trying to navigate here with Coach O'Brien. He's given us all different kinds of views of the arena and the outside, the inside. So people are going to feel like they really know. He's trying to get a picture of those banners behind him. They're turned the wrong way, though. You need to turn them the other way if you want people to see the Lipscomb women's soccer banners. So I mean, we were talking, and I wanted to ask you to think about this balance between, you've talked about, the relational piece and trying to develop young women and help them be all they can be, but you're also trying to get excellence in soccer. I mean, it's not a youth group. It's not a church youth group that's playing, church league sports, and it's also not a pro team where it's just kind of purely transactional. So, what are some key things that you think about or reinforce with the staff or the team to kind of help balance and kind of maximize what you're trying to do on those two fronts?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the kids are excited about that proposition to be a both and program, both highly competitive at the Division I level and glorifying to God at the same time. So when we're talking to them in the recruiting process, that a lot of times is what gets them excited. Well, when they show up, there's that responsibility of the coaching staff to hold players to a very high accountability level and expectation. It's like, hey, even though we love you, it doesn't mean we're going to let you slack off or not do the work that's necessary to be highly successful, because that's why you signed up to play here. You wanted to play here because you wanted to, win championships, but do it for a greater purpose. So for us, it's, it makes it easy to hold the players then to high expectations. And then, for whatever reason, it's just been a great recipe for us. And then I think, the other side of the coin is it's sometimes, if I'm being honest, can get a little bit messy when you decide, hey, I'm going to go deeper relationally with players than other programs, and you're not playing said player who you really, really care about, and who's amazing, whose heart's in the right place, and they're giving everything they got, but there's only 11 spots that play and you've got 25 on your team. It's hard. It sometimes as a coach can be really, really hard, but I would much rather manage that tension, that difficulty, and just continue to affirm and encourage who they are as people and be like, hey, keep working. Because some of our best players, they didn't show up and start playing as a freshman, nor did they even necessarily start playing as a sophomore. And some of them had to pay their dues and buy their time. And then the opportunity came. And then to see kids like that flourish is really, really rewarding because, it was a tough go. And they were challenged. But that's part of, I think, what makes our program, beautiful. If I'm being really honest with you, it's messy and it's hard. It would be much easier to just draw a hard line and not have to have those relationships. But the relationships are what give it the real beauty, in my opinion, and we'll continue to, operate that way.
I remember having this conversation with another coach at another sport several years ago now, where he had, all I'll say is, it was a women's sport, but the coach had a really good player early on. And then, frankly, recruited some other players that came in and were getting to play some, and the other one wasn't playing as much. And for that coach, it was kind of challenging because the person was wanting to be relational, as you said, and kind of the full experience in terms of development, but really just felt uncomfortable in kind of like, I know that person's not playing as much, and I don't really want to have to kind of go down that road of talking about that, or I don't want the discomfort of that. And what was interesting was kind of found out later, the player's concern was much more like, well, why is the coach not talking about it? There must be something wrong with me, or the coach must be mad or something. Otherwise, the coach would just tell me like, hey, it's nothing personal. It's just this other person's playing better. So, the coach was trying not to hurt the feelings or whatever, but it turned out, and thankfully found this all out and kind of was able to sort it out. But it was really the player was much more worried about the personal part of it than the playing part of it. They wanted to play and they loved it and they wanted to be good. But they were really more worried about the personal, relational part. And really, from the coach's perspective, it had nothing to do with that. It only had to do with playing. But that's some of the messiness you're talking about.
Exactly, yeah. And having coached men and women, it is very different. The men, they want scholarship and playing time, and that relationship with the coach really isn't that important, if I'm being honest. In women's soccer, it's very different. It's that relationship's really important. So to treat each player the same, regardless of their contribution on the team, has been a goal that I've set for myself. And, I've got a couple wonderful stories. Again, I won't name who they are, of players that they never, their whole careers, played as much as they wanted to play. But boy, did we just have the most vibrant, fun, exciting relationship. Because they knew they weren't a second-class citizen. It wasn't the starters here that we cared about and these girls that we didn't care about. It was, we cared about them all the same. And, and this is the nature of sports. Some are going to get a little bit more opportunity than others. But yeah, I can understand that, coaches, the tension there. I felt it, but thankfully the way our staff is kind of just the way we operate, we haven't really run into that as much.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about last year's team. I try not to spend too much time on individual players or games or teams or whatever, because if you didn't really follow it, if you followed it closely, I can't talk enough about it. There's no way I could do it justice. And if you haven't followed it that much, then you may not know some of the people I'm talking about or whatever. So try to strike the balance there. But last year you had another great season that culminated in going to the NCAA tournament, and quite frankly, in the finals, one of the most tension-packed, intense finals I've ever been a part of in any sport, against Kennesaw State. And in fact, it got down to PKs. And I think you looked this up, Kevin. At some point, even though you didn't know it at the time, we were down in the PKs. And I guess PK is not the right thing, but anyways, you know what I mean. Kind of set up the story where we were and set up the odds we had of success at some point along the way there before coming back to win, obviously.
Yeah, well, there's only 5 guaranteed kicks per team, right? And we went down 0-2. So they made their first 2. We missed our first 2. And I didn't know this either until we had won the game. It was the next day before the NCAA selection show. A couple of the girls went online and kind of Googled, our chances. And it was, we had a 1% chance of advancing when you're down 0-2 the way that we were. And it was just, incredible the way it played out. I
hope no future players are listening to this in case we get back in that situation, because I don't want them to know the odds, but it was pretty grim. It felt pretty grim as a fan, I'll tell you that. But I didn't know. I'd have even felt worse if I'd have known those odds at the time. But somehow we pulled it out. Yeah,
they're cruel. Penalties are cruel because Kennesaw's a good team, had a great season and everything. And but that when you go into penalties, it is really it's a little bit of toss of dice, because the goalkeeper's going to guess one way, the player's going to guess which way they're going to go, and then boom, if they align, then the keeper's going to save. If they don't, then you're probably going to make it unless they miss the whole goal, which doesn't happen as often. But it's always at that point in time, as a coach, there's really nothing you can do. There's no tactics apart from trying to calm their nerves a little bit and tell them, hey, you're prepared, you got this, we've spent a lot of time on this, you're ready, trying to instill a little confidence. Other than that, there's not a whole lot else. It comes down to just the chances, I guess.
So for people who don't really follow the game closely, and without giving away any trade secrets within Lipscomb women's soccer, I'll just ask a general question here. Generally, is it your experience that keepers have scouted the players on the other team and know enough about the statistical tendencies to kind of think, okay, well, here comes such and such, and so now that I'm going to, statistically they've gone this way or that way? Do they just kind of try to play it by feel? And on the side of the person taking it, have they made up their mind before they ever walk up, like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not even going to look at the keeper, I'm just going to do my thing? How does that work on both sides generally?
Yeah, I think preparation-wise, most of the keepers, at least at the Division I level or higher, are going to know, all right, throughout the season, this girl took a couple penalties, this girl took a couple. They will have scouted and watched them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's where that player is going to go. And then in terms of the player, we kind of talk to them. We'll do lots of repetition and try to get them in a real comfort zone where they're hitting with power and placement. But in the end, it comes down to feel. We had one player that scored one against Kennesaw that never went the way she went in that game. And it blew me away. It blew everyone away. And she was just like, no, I felt the keeper had me read, and she went the other way. So 100% feel at that point in time, and you just trust your players. Even the ones that we missed, the two that we missed were really good saves by their goalkeeper. It wasn't a bad execution on our part. It was just great goaltending on their part. So I think it's feel both ways. Keepers are trying to read, okay, which way is their body shape, their hips and their foot, and then they're gonna gamble and go with their gut.
What are the biggest things that you're looking now? Obviously, one of the things that a team's always trying to do is trying to elevate itself and to improve and that sort of thing. So, as you've kind of evaluated just Lipscomb women's soccer now, again, generally or specifically, answered however you want to, really. What are the things that you're thinking of now, 8 years in, probably different than you were first year in? What are the things that you're saying, hey, to do what we want to do, here's kind of what we're going to have to think about in the next few years?
I think a lot of that comes down to recruiting and belief in recruiting. I think early on, I'd go to a game and I'd be like, man, there's no way we can get that kid. Where now I go to a game, I'm like, hey, every kid's open. We've had as much success as anyone else out there. We're going for it. And we're going to put out who we are as a program and what makes us unique, and see if we can get really, really high level players to jump on board and commit to, Lipscomb and their future of soccer being with us. And, it's just really remarkable, just my mindset and how it has shifted over time. We had a kid that came and visited campus. We weren't here, but I talked to her yesterday and I said, hey, tell me about your visit. She was like, I came to Lipscomb. It was amazing. I loved it. Then I went to Louisville, then Virginia Tech, then South Carolina, then Georgia, and home. And I'm like, those were your 5 schools you visited? She said, yeah. And I said, and where do you think about Lipscomb? She was like, man, Coach, I loved it and love what you guys are doing. And so there's a real shot there. And I think, 8 years ago, I probably wouldn't even have chased after that kid because I would have thought, I'm going to get a no, so I'm not going to waste my time. Where now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put it out there who we are and let ultimately the Lord lead these players and these opportunities, and let them fall as they may. And it's really served us well. And we found a lot of talented female soccer players. That faith component is a big part of who they are, and the fact that we can sell that. Hey, we incorporate that into your daily life as a soccer player. I mean, we're gonna pray as a team. We're gonna listen to worship music. We're gonna do stuff that you probably, unless you're at a Christian school yourself, have never experienced. But it's so special and so, again, I say unique a lot because that's really what I feel like we are in terms of the Division I soccer landscape. And I've just been blown away at how many great players are hungering for that kind of environment.
One of the things we've talked about with all of our other coaches is recruiting. And so I'm going to ask a couple of recruiting type questions of you too. I think casual fans, just in terms of what people always ask me about or talk about, recruiting is one of the things that everybody's interested in. Just like how do you identify who to go after in this sea of players? What's the process in your sport for thinking about, okay, there's hundreds of thousands of young women who are playing soccer all over the world, millions probably. How do you identify them? And then how do you go about evaluating them? And then you kind of talked about the attracting them. I mean, what are some of the things that Lipscomb offers? You talked about that, but back up a little bit just on the identification and evaluation process for people who are, again, assume you're talking to, recruiting for dummies here. How do you go about identifying and evaluating talent in women's soccer as compared to other sports?
Yeah, well, there's a few different avenues. One thing that we do, there's big showcases, right? And for a school like ours, you've got to maximize your budget money, and you're going to pick out 5 to 8 showcases a year to go attend, where there's going to be literally 80 to 100 teams that have come in from all different parts of the country. Now, if you just showed up to that event blindly, your head would be spinning because there's just so many games, 20 plus games going on at a time, 22 players on each field. There's no way to do it. So probably about 4 years ago, we started to send out a pre-event email to basically, we reach out to the club coaches and the managers and say, hey, this is who we are as a program. We're not going to be right for all of your kids, but I guarantee you there's some of your kids that would love an environment like ours. Please share this with them and let them know that we're coming to, Phoenix next week. Well, then we'll get a rush of emails back saying, hey, coach, my coach forwarded me your email. Man, that sounds like a wonderful place. Would love it if you came out and watched me play. So then we'll go to an event with already, an Excel sheet of, it could be anywhere from 75 to 150 kids that are like, right off the bat, we think we're a fit for your school. And because they've read through we call it a who we are letter that we sent them. And so that is one way to start. Now, having said that, you might go to a field and just be like, wow, that's the kind of kid that I'm looking for. And she didn't write you. So we're just going to reach out to them when we return from that event and then start the dialogue. And then this year, obviously, June 15th was the first day we could reach out to kids. And we made calls 3 days straight, about 8 hours a day, just calling kids up saying, hey, I know you maybe never heard of us, but it's the best place you never heard of. Because we'll call kids in California and Maine and, all these places that really, for a Lipscomb, when you're private, there's no incentive to recruit in-state, really. There's a Hope Scholarship, but when the money's the same, if you're from California or Tennessee, we're like, hey, let's just go get the best kids that fit our model and our program that want to be a part of, Lipscomb University. And it's really, really, I think 4 years ago, making that decision to send that pre-event email to kind of filter, it's been really, really helpful. But then there's ID camps, and then kids come to campus and they come check you out that way. And that's a wonderful way to get recruited, because not only can you work with them, you can have conversations with them. And I think in the end, when the player hears the heart of the coach that they might be playing for in the future, that's either going to sway them one way or the other. They're either going to be like, wow, I see that I could really thrive in that environment, or like, you know what, I'm looking for something different. Either way, it's great, because it helps that player define what direction to step, and it helps us as coaches kind of trim the list, from thousands to hundreds, and then hundreds to tens, and then tens to, every class is normally 10 or less. So that's kind of how we go about it.
So I was having this conversation with Charles Morrow, our men's soccer coach, last week when we visited with him. And so I'd kind of be interested in your perspective as well. Other sports, if you're watching baseball, I mean, pretty much if you go to find a pitcher, he's got okay. Tanner, are we still with Kevin or not?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'm going to start over again. He'll plug it in. So, okay, no worries. So
I got a phone call. Tanner, how do I fix it? I got a phone call. Can I hit a button and not get a phone call?
No, you're good. As long as it cuts out. I didn't see your picture anymore, but don't worry about it. We're just talking. So a lot of people just be listening. So I'm just going to start over. Tanner he'll slice and dice this. Nobody will ever know the difference. So I was talking with Charles Morrow about this last week, our men's soccer coach, and I'm interested in hearing your perspective on this. If you're recruiting baseball, let's say, and you're recruiting a pitcher, obviously they have the ball in their hands. You can watch 100 pitches if you want to or whatever, and kind of get a feel for them. And in basketball, certainly there's, a lot of times the ball's in their hand, and whether it's ball handling, passing, shooting, I mean, you can kind of get a lot of action. But in soccer, even the best of the players don't really always have the ball on their foot nearly as much as other sports, the players directly interacting, with the ball or whatever. So I'm curious there with soccer, how you think about that in terms of identification. I mean, there have to be things you're watching that don't have to do with, putting the ball in the back of the net, as important as that is. There's got to be other things that you're watching when you're watching players to try to evaluate them.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. So you're going to look, and this was a big shift in our program, was you're going to look at athleticism, because we have, a schedule. Like this year, we're set up to play 4 SEC teams, an ACC team. It's like when you're playing against some of these Power 5 programs, you've got to have the athleticism that can go toe-to-toe. So that's kind of the first thing that you look at. technical ability. Sometimes to get the high-end athlete, you might lose a little bit of technical ability. The player that's a great technician and has incredible athleticism, it most likely is going to a top 10, top 20 team. And, as much as I just shared how much I'm going to go after everyone, have belief, there's some that are playing for our youth national teams that they're just not, they're not a viable option for us. And then you're going to look at also kind of work ethic. For me, that's a massive one because there's so much work done off the ball, whether it's tracking a defender, chasing back to recover, to clear a ball off the line, making a run to get in the box, to get on the end of a cross. That work ethic to me is going to be in the top two qualities that I'm looking for. So I want athleticism and I want work ethic. And the rest of the stuff we can help you with. Like, we can help you get more technical. We can improve your passing. We can improve your vision and understanding of the game. But those couple things are really, really, at least for our program, the direction that we've kind of been going the last 4 or 5 years. And it's helped us, again, become a little bit more relevant with the better programs in the country.
I remember telling you last year, and I shared this last week when I was talking to Charles, there was one young woman on our team in particular last year, and I can't remember the match I was watching at this point, but I remember she did not start, but she came in about midway. Seems like maybe in both halves. She came in about halfway, and we ended up scoring, I believe, in the second half. But she didn't score. But I actually told my wife. I mean, I had noticed this one particular young woman just making run after run into the box, and just like you said, just to have potentially be on the receiving end of a cross or whatever. Well, never turned out that she got the goal. But when we scored later, it was really, my opinion, the defender had just gotten tired of chasing players, and another girl scored. And I compared it to my wife. I said, it's like a boxer who's just given body blows in the middle rounds. There's no knockout punch, but eventually when the knockout comes in the 12th round, yeah, it was that punch, but it was really probably as much as anything, all those body blows. And sometimes that's what a player brings to the game. They don't, at the end of the match, if you didn't really watch it, you don't even hardly know what they did, but it was just those kind of consistent body blows that helped the team.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, the value that kind of player brings to your team is monumental. And to take it a step further, the players that aren't even sometimes getting time, that are encouraging, that are, when players come off and they've got water ready, and just the buy-in of the kids on our team, it's special. And for me, I think, again, that's part of why we're attaining the successes that we are, is because we've got bought-in kids that it doesn't matter what role is being asked of them, they're willing to give everything they've got. And again, some are getting more time. That girl made lots of runs without necessarily getting the goal to win the game. But I fully agree with you and believe that's 100% a huge part of why we maybe got the goal or won the game. It's the willingness, the selflessness of our players to do that little bit extra that other teams are like, man, I'm tired of chasing this girl. And then you finally get your chance. And, it only takes a few seconds to get that opportunity to win a soccer game. And thankfully we've got kids that are bought in and willing to, exhaust themselves for the good of the group, which is really great.
One more recruiting question, then I'll move on to a few others and we'll kind of start to wind it down a little bit. But you've coached long enough that you've kind of seen the full development of the transfer portal and the transfer, phenomenon in college sports, I guess I would say. I would imagine when you first started coaching at Creighton, you had some, but probably not nearly the number of transfers that you see now. Just from a guy who's done it for a while, just what's your take on the transfer portal, the ability to transfer? I mean, how do you think about that as a coach and as somebody who has to take account of it in your recruiting strategy?
Yeah, I'm a big supporter. I actually think it's great. I don't think any player should be subjected to being a part of something they don't want to be a part of. So I think them having the freedom to say, you know what, I gave it a shot. This isn't really, I think, what's in the best interest of me and my future, and I'm going to try something else. So I'm a big fan of it. Now, our program has reaped the rewards big time in the transfer portal, and we've got multiple kids that tried Power Five, and kids that were actually playing with their Power Five program, and just the environment wasn't right, or there's a myriad of issues that just weren't right in those situations where they said, okay, you know what, we're gonna give Lipscomb a chance. And I think that's been a big part of the strengthening of our overall team, probably over the last 3 years, more than the years prior. And the transfer portal has a lot to do with it, because these kids that maybe committed when they were sophomores in high school, and then they think it's going to be one thing and it doesn't turn out to be exactly as they wanted it to be. I love that they're getting lots of opportunities on the bounce to go find a new home and thrive in a new environment. And I love it that we've been able to land some great ones here.
It's really interesting when you talk to transfers. There's some of my favorite people to talk to when they come onto campus, because what you just said, who knows what they were basing their decision on when they were 14, 15, 16 years old. But usually by the time if they're thinking about making a change, I'm not happy whenever somebody wants to make a change, if it's, because the situation wasn't good or whatever. But I do think that it just adds some clarity to the decision-making process that it's just almost impossible to have when you're 15 years old or 14 or whatever. Now, not to say that people can't when they're that age, but, certainly they've had experiences now that kind of helps them think about, well, what really is important to me in my experience in college sports. And, maybe it isn't that they, wore the same shoes that we did, or that, I know there was one sport, I won't even name the sport. We had one sport that the athlete had come in with a list of 20 factors that they were looking at in the recruiting process, which I was kind of impressed that there was a list or whatever. But I promise I'm not making this up. One of them was proximity to a Walmart. And I thought, okay, like there's a lot of important things, but I got to tell you, like proximity to a Walmart is probably not, but that was actually on that person's, I'll say it this way, it wasn't a women's sport, so at least I'll take sports out of it. So in any event, just a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. I like to ask this next couple questions I've asked to every coach we've had on here, so that you're just going to get the same questions they get. If you were commissioner for a day for the game of soccer, that could be women's game, EPL, MLS, whatever, but the game of soccer, if you were commissioner for a day and you said, this is what I'd like to change about the game, I think it'd make it a better game, a more fun, more enjoyable, more attractive game, or whatever, what would you change if I made you commissioner for a day for the game of soccer?
Yeah, I would say make it free for everybody. If there's a way to do that, there are a lot of super talented inner city kids, kids that are coming from, more impoverished cities or nations or fill in the blank, where they can't have access to the game of soccer, and they could be phenomenal soccer players if they were given the opportunity, but for whatever reason, they can't afford club and they can't pay for private training and they can't do that kind of thing. That's a pretty easy answer for me. I'd make it free for everybody, and I guarantee you every team out there would get a whole lot better.
Huh, interesting. That has not been an answer before, but I love it. That's a great answer. So, all right. So one other question then that I ask all the coaches. So, go back and talk to first year coach Kevin O'Brien. Go back and give him some advice from, 8 years in, or even talk to younger Coach O'Brien if you want to. But what advice would you now give yourself 10, 15 years ago as a coach? Like, hey, if I could just go ahead and save you the trouble or help you out now, let me just tell you this. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time?
Yeah, another pretty easy one. You don't have to prove all that you know, because I think early in my career, I was dead set on proving how smart I was in the game of soccer. I had my X's and O's down. I knew how to be successful. I knew how to build a team. And there was just this incessant drive in me to prove to people that I was good at it. And what I missed were the relationships and letting people know that actually I care about you. You provide more to this program and to me as a coach for who you are than what you can provide me on the field. And I learned that over time. I think I failed miserably early on just trying to be successful through intellect and not a whole lot of heart. And then once I kind of gave my heart over to the coaching side and started to really care about the players and not be as concerned about how I looked, everything got better. So that would have saved me a whole lot of probably frustration and disappointment if I'd have just said, hey, you don't have to prove yourself. Just go out and let the people you're working alongside know that you care about them, know that we're in it together. There's no hierarchy. It's not you and then the team underneath you, you and the assistant coaches underneath you. We're all in this together. And that's been a real, I think, big learning experience of mine from the start to now, for sure.
Huh. So now, are you a particular fan of any particular team or program that you just kind of cheer for as a fan?
Lipscomb men's basketball, Lipscomb women's basketball, Lipscomb softball, Lipscomb baseball. No, in terms of like world soccer.
Yeah, right.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get asked that all the time. Who do I support? I'm insatiable. Like if there's 4 games on one day, I'm watching all 4 games. I don't even DVR it because I'm gonna work in front of the TV and get it done. So I love it all. I love watching not only EPL. Now that MLS has kicked off, I'm disappointed Nashville Soccer Club isn't in the event, but I've been watching the MLS is back games and
I've been watching. So since we work at home now, I do DVR it, and every morning I get up, I get my coffee, I go sit in the den with the TV on, and on my computer I start working, and then I watch from the day before. In fact, Brent McMillan, that our associate AD for external affairs, he knows there's a 24-hour rule. As we record this right now, Chelsea's playing right now Norwich, and he knows he's not supposed to text me anything because he's got to wait at least 24 hours before we talk about it, because I'll watch it sometime here in the next 24 hours. Actually pulling for Norwich. I'm a Man U guy. So in any event, he knows not to do that, but I've watched Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A. I mean, I just watch whatever. And it's just, for me, it's just kind of nice background. You kind of work, and then, something happens, you kind of look up, and then that sort of thing. So I'm right there.
I do the same exact thing, and I have the same rule with my assistant coaches, but not because those guys get updates on their phones. Like if someone scores a goal.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah, so I don't do it either. But I can't tell you how many times I've had to reprimand my assistant coaches saying, hey, you can't be talking about the game now. Like, because when we're in season, the games are coming on in the afternoon when we're working and then we're out of practice. And they'll want to talk about the games, and I'll be like, nope, can't talk about it.
Yeah, he'll send me a picture of Pulisic or something, and I know he scored a goal then at that point once he sends it to me. I'm like, I told you I don't want to know anything about it. You're not going to send me a picture of him unless something good just happened, So in any event, I'm right there with you. So so you're not on social media that I can tell. I guess you maybe lurk on social media, but do you have your own account? I mean, am I missing something there? Do you have any accounts on your own?
Unless Facebook is social media, which I don't think it qualifies.
That day is past.
Yeah, I know. I do not. You cannot follow me on anything apart from Lipscomb Women's Soccer, Instagram, and Twitter. And I'm on it all the time, like on the Lipscomb Women's Soccer account. But I'm just not posting myself. I
leave that to your staff.
I leave that to my staff. They do a fantastic job, and they communicate our message as well. And but yeah, that's not something that I really have ever gotten into. I love it, and there's nothing wrong with it. But it's not something that I just know would probably overtake my life. I think that's maybe my greatest fear. And therefore, I've been fighting against it for a while.
Well, last question here, and we'll have to some other time talk more. We didn't even get into, you've got a couple of children, athletic in their own right. We had to talk a little bit more about Shannon and the fam and that sort of thing. But just last question for fun for our fans here. If you're going on a recruiting lunch, breakfast, or dinner, if you're like, hey, we've got a recruit in town, and we're going to take them, on a recruiting lunch, breakfast, dinner, is there any place that's kind of a go-to for you or your staff?
Yeah, we're big Taqueria fans, so we'll take the recruits to Taqueria del Sol, and our conversion rate at that place is pretty phenomenal. And on top of it, the food's great as well. So
I've hired a couple of coaches the same way. I'll take them there. And okay, if you end up here, then you could come right down the street. You could come here anytime. So
yeah, because not only is it great food, but it's a great part of town. It's right down the road, and I think, Nashville is such a cool city. It sells itself, but being able to, have a recruit in that environment is just, I think, really, the vibe's great, the energy's great, and it's a really fun part of town.
Yeah. Well, Obi, thanks for being a part of this today. I hope that people who are listening got through their workout while they were doing this, or drove to work or back or whatever. If they're watching, I hope they enjoyed that too. And as I said, we've kind of gone through every coach, and you're the last one. We may still have one or two episodes, I guess, left. This started out just as kind of a thing to do during the coronavirus, but it's been great. We've gotten to know each of the coaches, getting to know their programs a little bit better, kind of what's the philosophy behind them and that sort of thing. And so certainly it's been a great time. I want to encourage our fans or people who want to know more about our team to follow Lipscomb Women's Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, as you said, at Lipscomb WSOC. They can obviously learn much more about us by going to lipscombsports.com and just check out the website. Also on for more general news about all our programs, including Lipscomb Women's Soccer, at Lipscomb Bisons. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, those are all places that you can learn about Lipscomb athletics at Lipscomb Bisons. But it's been fantastic, and I sure do hope here in a month or so that we're watching you guys starting to train, and goodness, a month from now, possible we could be seeing you playing even an exhibition almost. But I hope whenever it starts that we'll get to see soccer again this year, and that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Thanks so much.